recording now. This is a very exciting day. It's our first day doing a public Zoom meeting. We've been doing Zoom meetings for a little while, but I'm very excited about this. So welcome everyone. We have everyone here except for Michael, so we have quorum. I'm going to start. So we will officially call the meeting to order. Would the Secretary Treasurer like to take the roll call?
Tarquinio?
Here.
Gallagher?
Here.
Paul here. Sue?
Here.
And Lauren?
Here.
Kretsky's not here. It looks like we have Mike Riley and Bob Becker as attendees. Hi, guys.
Hey everyone, including the attendees. And hopefully Mike Koreski did tell me that he wouldn't be able to make it, so he may just be running a few minutes late.
No, I just texted him, Alex.
Okay, good. And I emailed some people to tell them about the meeting, and I do know that we may have one or two others join us as attendees, so I'll keep an eye on that. I won't take too much time going over the Zoom rules today. We will only use a portion of the new functionality, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a memo to the full board this week going over some of the really cool things that we can do now in terms of using the Q&A and polls and sharing presentation. There's a lot that we can do with this new functionality, but what the most important thing is, of course, we're able to open up the public part of the meeting and then go into executive session, which is something we're legally obligated to do to protect that. So this is very exciting. Another thing is I am going to be limiting comments for the committee members and next week for the board members to 2 minutes, but that's just to keep it moving along. I'll be using a timer today, which we didn't have before. You'll hear a beep at 2 minutes. I'll just ask if anyone else wants to comment. If no one else does, then the speaker can continue. And if anyone does want to comment and the speaker had things left unsaid, they can, of course, just raise their hand. Another thing to mention is that I will be in Indianapolis on Wednesday and Thursday. We have a staff retreat on Thursday. On Wednesday, I'm going early to have some one-on-one time with the staff. So if you do have questions, I will send a memo about Zoom. If anyone has any questions about the meeting on Saturday, try to get those to me by Tuesday. After Tuesday, I'll answer them, but you may have to wait, a long time for the reply because I'll be on flights. And finally, I do want to point out that with the exception of the fellows, everything on today's agenda will be on the agenda next Saturday for the full board meeting. I did ask Allison for a couple of reports on finances and this 110-year plan. We'll start that discussion today. She could not be in this meeting, however, because the executive committee wanted to meet at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. And I know Allison is a regular church goer and is always at church on 11 o'clock on a Sunday. And one thing I won't do is mess with anyone's services or religious observances. So she will be in the public part of Saturday's meeting. So if you have specific questions about those reports that only she can answer, we'll have to save those for Saturday. And also at the 12:30 mark, I do want to move into executive session because the one thing we must accomplish today is the decision on the fellows. That is the only thing we can't do in next week's meeting, and we have a lot of good candidates. So without further ado, I do want to discuss the first item on the agenda, which is the financial plan. And when I say financial plan, this is planning for the next fiscal year. And this is something this board really hasn't done before, is be a part of that process, which typically begins around February. And the staff, all of the managers talk to the ED and talk about their priorities and fundraising and where they want to spend the money next year. I don't know about all of you, but I was really surprised when we got a deficit budget presented to us last April. I hadn't been given any warning of that, even as the incoming president. And I told Allison I don't approve of that. And even though our revenue is down, I want a balanced budget for approval. And when I say budget, we have to understand those are the expected revenue stream versus the expected expenses. So one thing I'd like this board to start doing today and next Saturday is talking about our priorities and where we would like the staff to focus, both additional ideas for fundraising and also where we see maybe room for economies. So with that, I want to open it up to discussion about the fiscal planning for 2020. Does anyone want to raise their hand just to kick off that? Yes, Patty, very good. You are the most appropriate person to think about the 2020 budget.
Right. So I am concerned, as you are, as I think we all are, that we're in a deficit position. And I'm happy to see information from Allison getting ahead of it and putting out some ideas. But I don't want to go through a litany of questions, but I have quite a few questions about her memo, about what she and the staff will be doing to reduce the deficit, both, as you say, through fundraising opportunities and through cost savings. So there are a lot of kind of broad brush statements in her memo that I guess perhaps we have to wait until February 2 to have that conversation with her. Alex, would you say that's the best way to proceed?
I think specific questions, you can raise them briefly now, but given that we do need to talk about the fellows, I would go into real detail on the questions in her memo on Saturday. She is going to be in the public portion. Obviously, there's something she can't be in the executive session for, but she will do that on February 2nd. And obviously she's at church today, so I can't even text her or anything with those questions. So I think maybe the best way to focus it is what we would like the priorities to be going forward, if we have other fundraising ideas, and also if we have ideas on ways to make economies or specific programs that we don't want to make economies in, for example. Specific programs that are such a priority, we're not looking for cuts there, that sort of thing. Does anyone have any thoughts there? Yes, Lauren. I saw Lauren's hand first and then Sue. So Lauren, and I will set the timer. And
I don't think this will take a full 2 minutes. I just wanted to express a concern. I think Patty framed it well, that there's a lot of things in here that bring up a lot of questions. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is the idea of coming up with a budget based on non-existent donations. I know she and Larry are working very hard, but I don't think you can budget on something you don't have a commitment for. And that is very scary to me and very concerning to me. And I don't think I'm going to defer to Matt and those who have been Secretary Treasurer, and there's 3 of you here. But I'm thinking that is not a best practice in budgeting, and that's very concerning.
Okay, Sue?
I would concur with that, and I will flat out say the idea of expecting to raise what I consider to be an inordinate amount of money from this 110th anniversary, which I think is ill-advised, and or this, whatever we're going to do about celebrating women in SPJ is also ill-advised. That is, and I'll get into that when we get into the discussion, but at the DC SPJ meeting yesterday, there was absolutely no support for either one. None.
Okay, does anyone else want to raise their hand? Okay, Matt.
I guess I take a different view on that. I'm open to hearing what Alice, I know that many board members are not inclined to support either of those, or at least have ideas on how to proceed. But if there's a way to make money, I think we should hear her out. I think she needs to have a specific plan, tell us how she would meet it, give us some timeline and some goals that we can hold her accountable to. But clearly, $41,000 budget that's going in the wrong direction, as she says, we need some revenue streams. We need to kind of diversify. And I just think, frankly, I think this initial overview is useless. And so I think what we really need to have is a full board discussion devoted to this, to hear from her, to Patty's point, specifically how she's going to, and to Laura's point, how she's going to raise money, because we need money. I'm not inclined to raise dues. I would not even put that on the table at this point, maybe in future years. But clearly, A, we need money, B, we need to hear from her. And C, I think we're almost doing this backwards. We have a review with her where we're going to set priorities for her. Those priorities for her will then drive the budget. So it's almost like backwards, I think, to go through this either on 2 parallel tracks or go through this exercise first where we try to set priorities. I think there needs to be a little more holistic thinking in how we do this, and open to hearing how we can accomplish that.
Matt, I like the word holistic. I mean, there is a timing issue, which is that the ED review process is ongoing and will be ongoing for the next 2 months. It will be reviewed in the April meeting when the budget will be presented. and we need a budget then. So they do have to go along on parallel tracks, but if they could be holistic and they can inform each other, the people doing the ED review process and the financial review, that is important. Now, I noticed in the chat channel, Matt, Billy from staff said hello to you. So I don't know if he has a question for you, but keep an eye on that. Oh, that was the 2-minute button. And let me just miss that. Okay, Patty, did you have your hand up? You're next.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be possible to forward a series of questions to Allison about what she put in the memo, so that if this same document's going to come before the full board next Saturday, that that she can address some of the kind of at least surface level concerns that we're expressing here. Again, it's a very broad memo. It's an aspirational memo about things that potentially could pay off. I see, you know, the big potential, the big dollars are the ones that might come from big donations, right? And might come from association management. She lists a lot of plans around the idea of 110th and a 50th celebration. All of those strike me as small income producers, you know, merchandise and so forth. Those are not going to bring in $41,000 and reverse our fortunes in that regard. So I would like to see more specifics on the two biggest potential income producers, and that is what's actually happening on, and this is something that I assume would have to be an executive session, what's actually happening on the fundraising front, which entities are we continuing to chase, and where do we stand on these nascent relationships that might bring us more association management.
Okay, Patty, I can answer that because as a matter of fact, Allison did provide some more detail in a first draft of this memo. And that was really only appropriate for executive session. So I had to remind her that we would be discussing the financial outlook in public session, at which point she had to remove some of the specific detail that I think you all would like. And that's simply because I feel like we should be talking about our long-term goals and objectives and where we want to put the money in public session. However, there are certain items we cannot discuss in public session. For example, with fundraising, we're obligated to keep ongoing discussions with potential fundraisers private. Most fundraisers will not allow you to say anything, not even only once they agree to give you the money, but once they approve the public statement about their grant, then we can announce that we're talking to sponsor X about fundraising. So that detail could not be in this memo because this was a memo for a public meeting. What we could ask Allison to do is to draft 2 memos. One for public meeting and one telling us about some of the specific fundraising, which we can only discuss at this point in executive session. At that point, we go into executive session because we have items to discuss, which involve legal contracts and the like. Because I do think we need some more of the detail, and Allison has some of that detail. Bear in mind, it's early. This is early days in the budgeting process. But I do think it's a good idea to come back with specific questions. I'd also bear in mind that this is the week of the staff retreat. So Wednesday and Thursday are pretty much out. If she's going to do any work on an additional memo, it would have to be done Monday or Tuesday. So maybe Matt, as Secretary Treasurer, maybe you and Patty could draft some questions that you share with the Executive Committee, and we could get those to Allison within reason. She could get us a new memo. I'll give her by end of day Tuesday or Wednesday to do that for the packet, the public packet, but also maybe a little more detail for us to hear in executive session next week. How does that sound with everyone?
Can we take 2 minutes to knock out 5 questions that we can ask her right now? I mean, it seems like...
Matt, do you want, I'll start the timer. Do you want to take 2 minutes and come up with your ideas because you are Secretary Treasurer?
Sure. Well, despite what I just said about membership dues, that's the biggest revenue stream for us. I think we should ask her to have staff do a study of other journalism organizations' membership dues. And that can then inform any discussion that we have whenever we have it. So that's question 1 that I have. 2 is I'm curious to know, because our awards process is working its way to the end right now, how much money came in, whether that's up or down from past years, and whether we can expect that to be a steady stream going forward. I don't know if it's a question or a priority. In my personal opinion, I think that we should prioritize Google, Facebook, and Scripps in this coming budget. So I think we should ask a third question, how are those programs doing in the budget? These are all specific questions that we need to get a handle on for what we want in it and kind of revenue streams. So those are the three questions that I have, in addition to what Patty asked about the big ones, fundraising and association management, which we need to get our arms around.
That's
There's
an
five
excellent,
right there.
yeah. No, and as the secretary, you're also taking the minutes too. So you will put that memo together then for Allison. We've talked a lot about the lost revenue from associated management. We have not talked that much about the decline in membership revenue, and that's important. So I think we need to move that up on the agenda. Now, Patty, did you have your hand raised? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you did. Does anyone else want to follow on with Matt with specific questions to ask Allison to follow up with? Okay. Matt, can I ask you to work on that memo for Allison, and perhaps any exec members, if you think of questions afterwards, can email them maybe to Matt and I, and we'll get those questions to her on Monday morning.
Yeah, if you guys want to send me questions today, I'll get that out to her tonight so she has it first thing. Thanks.
Okay. If we are done there, we can move to the next item on the agenda. Okay, is everyone okay with that? The plan to celebrate the 110th anniversary of SPJ and the 50th anniversary of women. And this is, as I think Matt noted, primarily a fundraising plan. This is kind of a common thing with organizations to use anniversaries for fundraising. Lauren, I saw your hand up first. You'll have to unmute yourself, or I can unmute you, but it's easier.
No problem. I was just trying to be respectful of everybody else so you don't hear any background noise here. So I want to separate these two issues.
Good idea.
And I want to take the 50th first. To me, this is not a fundraising issue. This is a reputation issue. And to celebrate that we were very late to the game in admitting women is not something that I believe we should do. So if you bear with me to make life easy for Matt, I'm putting a motion in the chat box right now. If it will cut and paste and let me do that.
I need to interrupt you right there, Lauren.
Okay.
I know that the executive committee is allowed to make motions. However, the full board will be discussing this on Saturday. I do not want any definitive motions today on this.
So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Alex, is we can get a recommendation from
No, I do want to say it is wonderful that senior board members are meeting to discuss this. However, the full staff will be discussing these anniversaries at the retreat on Thursday, and the full board will be discussing them on our meeting on Saturday. And Allison will be there to answer questions and talk about her plan in person, which she is not because she's at church, because this group wanted to meet at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. I feel it's disrespectful to the staff and to the full board to pass a definitive motion.
Again, what I'm saying is we can recommend, if you don't want to pass a definitive motion.
No, I want discussion today.
We certainly can discuss, but there's no reason that I can't bring a motion forward and that we as an executive committee can't recommend adoption of a motion. Right. That was a very common practice in past executive.
Yes, and that was a real problem, and the executive committee was, I believe, rightfully criticized.
I believe under Robert's rules, I'm allowed to make this motion and see if there's a second. So I will go ahead and read my motion right now, if you want to start timing me. I move that the society.
Well, actually, I started timing you from when you initially spoke. So here's your motion timer.
Thank you. I move that the Society of Professional Journalists doesn't officially recognize its 50th anniversary of admitted women. In doing so, SPJ will not use any logo representing or commemorating its 50th anniversary of admitting women, sell any branded scarves for $50 each to celebrate 50 years of women in SPJ, sell any SPJ branded yoga mats to celebrate 50 years of women in SPJ, sell any other merchandise to recognize its 50th anniversary of admitting women, publish any stories in Quill or on SPJ's website commemorating its 50th anniversary of admitting women. I also move that in 2019, the Society of Professional Journalists recognize accomplished women journalists. To do that, SPJ will publish Quill and online articles limited to either the first SPJ women members, some of the first SPJ women presidents, and or prominent women SPJ members, submit a program proposal for EIJ featuring accomplished women journalists such as Linda Deutsch, have the headquarters staff submit to the SPJ Executive Committee any additional ideas they have, All ideas require approval of the SPJ Executive Committee or full SPJ Board to implement. That's my motion.
Do we have a second? Okay,
Yes.
Sue, yes, I thought you might second. I do want to say I think it's actually appalling that a small group of leaders would try to cut out the entire board with such a motion and cut off all discussion at the staff retreat, which the staff has been looking forward to, and this is a real esprit de corps building exercise, and the full board will be discussing this in less than a week with the executive director on the phone to answer questions. And the only reason the executive director is not here is because this executive committee insisted at, oh, sorry, that's the timer. This executive committee insisted at meeting at 11 a.m. on a Sunday, and our executive director is an avid churchgoer and was unable to be here. I think that would set an appalling precedent. I do know that in years past, the executive committee would take actions without the permission of the full board, and that was rightly criticized as the executive committee being elitist. But at that time, everyone needed to travel in, and the executive committee traveled in person at great expense. Now we have Zoom meeting. Less than a week, the board will be discussing this.
Alex, please stay on point.
I am staying on point. I'm telling you that I think this is a gross misuse of the executive committee.
Let me address your point. Here's the problem. The staff proceeded with a concept that should have been, at least at the very minimum, shared with the executive committee, because there are broad implications. We are in a budget deficit situation. If you'll note, Mike Riley even has addressed this on our comment side. I would appreciate if you would at least take a moment and read Mike's comments. They are very germane to our discussion. This is the essential part. There is grave concern, and I will bring this up now. I did a straw poll. There were at least 36 people at this DC Pro meeting. There were brand new members. They were, I would venture to say, about 50% women. The women were outraged that we would even recognize the concept that we were just 50 years into this organization. On the flip side, they came up with fantastic ideas on how to honor the women and the presence of women in this organization. That is what it should be noted and celebrated, not this bullshit thing, pardon my expression, but it's ridiculous. And one of the people in attendance there happened to be Dr. Maureen Beasley, who was among the first women to belong to SPJ when it opened it up to women. That is the approach we need to be taking. That is the matter which should have gone before the executive committee. And I agree with you. It needs to go to the full board. I'm not suggesting for a moment that we have the final say here. Not for a minute. I agree with you on that point. But this should have been shared, and we should have had input before it moved forward for all of these reasons.
Okay, that is the 2-minute buzzer, but I just want to say that's the process we're beginning now. This idea came out of a staff meeting. The staff has, and I'll get to you in a second, Patty, but the staff has weekly meetings. This idea came out of a meeting. Some of the old timers mentioned these ideas because, let's face it, the new timers don't know the history as well. That was the beginning of the process, and the staff is going to discuss it a little bit more on Thursday when they hold a retreat. We are discussing it at an executive committee meeting. We will discuss it in the February 2nd board meeting. We are at the starting point of the process of allowing the board to have input. But my difficulty with Lauren's motion is it lays out X, Y, Z. It says it gives examples of who we might honor. You're cutting off debate. By passing a motion like that in executive committee, you're cutting off, no, I'm sorry, Patty has her hand up first. You're cutting off debate for the full board. It's Patty and then Lauren.
You're muted.
You're muted, and I've just set the timer. Thanks.
Hi. I don't share any outrage at what I've seen so far, so I'll say a few things. I think that Allison has kept us informed about the idea of doing something to mark 110th and something to mark the 50th. I would agree with Alex that this is the beginning of the conversation. We are having our first real EIJ 19 meeting tomorrow, and by real, I mean actually looking at program ideas. I haven't actually looked at that document yet. That's today. And definitely on my list of priorities is to have something that honors women, right? Mm-hmm. However that looks. So I'm totally sensitive to what you're saying, Laura, and what you've seconded, Sue, that we shouldn't celebrate that we were late to the game, but we should certainly celebrate the women who have been significant contributors to SPJ and significant contributors to the field of journalism, which is multitudes, right? So I think we should get our brains around how we do that, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Scarves might not be the best idea, right? And other kinds of merchandise. But I think we need lots of good ideas and lots of women's names to come forward that we can potentially shape some programming around, and potentially some revenue enhancing ideas. I don't know if that's, as we get to the fellows, for example, I feel strongly that we should have a woman among our fellow candidates this year in celebration of women in SPJ. So, I think there's a way to both give a nod to the fact that it's 50, acknowledge the fact that we should have been earlier, right? Maybe we have a panel about why it took so long, or maybe that's worked into one of our panels. We are early in the going, right? To mark this. Thank you.
Okay, I do want to respond to one question from Mike Riley, and then I saw Sue's hand before Lauren. Mike says, we're in a deficit budget. Why are we spending money on scarves and yoga mats? And actually, if you look at the memo, it does say we won't do that unless they're sponsored. In other words, a sponsor would pay for the scarves or whatever. Those are just ideas. But a sponsor would pay for the product. We would sell it at 100% profit. If we don't get a sponsor, the staff has said they won't do that. So that's the answer to Mike Riley's question. Okay, Sue and then Lauren.
I just want Patty, no, I think we're in sync on that. And I would actually volunteer, since the two of us have a considerable amount of history in SPJ, that I would love to be able to help you with that effort.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually hope that a large majority of the board will be involved in whatever we do to honor women or to honor the 110th. That was always the idea. I think a few people think that the staff is doing this on their own. That was always the idea, that the board would be involved. Lauren, you're next.
To that point you just raised, Alex, it did not come across that the board would be involved. It came across that the staff made this decision. This is a policy decision for the board to make. Staff is free at all times to make recommendations to us, but the board sets policy, the staff implements policy. And as far as the motion that I brought forward today, I just want to make a friendly amendment to myself, which is that the executive committee endorse this motion to forward to the board for discussion and approval next Saturday.
Okay, I'm actually not certain from Robert's rules if you can make a friendly amendment to yourself. What you could do is amend, I think, your own motion.
Okay, so I'm amending my motion then to.
Okay, you can amend your motion. Sue, do you, I see you nodding your head. You second, okay, you're the second.
And that was the goal all along.
Okay, yeah, no, I just want to say, I think Lauren is getting to something deeper, which is that I think what we're actually dealing with here is a communication problem. I think some of the communications coming from headquarters, and I will say this on the record in a public meeting, have sounded a bit dictatorial. I know that was not the intention with the 110th and 50th or whatever we do. I know the intention was to involve the staff, but sometimes in the emails, they do sound like they've come up with an idea rather than they've come up with a plan for board approval. And I'm not going to let that happen during my term. Matt, you had your hand up.
I think the motion is a little too specific. Lauren, I understand what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that you and Sue and others are kind of disenchanted with that whole concept, but trying to move it in the right direction. I guess I would just humbly suggest that rather than get into that level of specificity, that what we recommend on Saturday when Allison and the full board are there is just task 2 or 3 members of our board to work with staff to make sure that at EIJ and maybe before, maybe subsequently, but that this year that we get a way to recognize women who have made an impact in SPJ. Not that we're celebrating the fact that we were sexist for far too long as an organization, but that if you and if Sue and others can help Patty program EIJ, recognize the woman that you referenced to, or Linda, Lauren, or whoever, however we decide to do it, in as big a way as we decide to recognize and celebrate women in SPJ. I just think that the getting into the details and that is a little more than I would be happy to do. And
I wanted to just say that I agree that I would support a very general statement saying that the board should consider it, which was always the consideration, but not the specific thing. Okay, so Patty, Sam first, then Lauren, then Sue. Patty, go ahead. Patty, you're on mute. Please, I can unmute you, but it's quicker if you do. Okay.
Keep going back and forth.
I'm restarting the timer.
So last year we did SPJ 5. There were 5 SPJ centric programs within the programming, and we're likely to do that again. And one of my SPJ 5 ideas is just, I call women. Mm-hmm. So definitely would love other board members and staff to collaborate on what we're going to do. So I definitely see that as a almost a must do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Lauren.
Okay, so 2 specific points. One thing that I believe needs to remain specific is that we are not celebrating the 50th anniversary of us admitting women, that we're celebrating women. And the reason why I included the specifics is because my experience with current staff is if you don't provide specifics, then they just go forth and do. And so since there were specifics brought up by the staff about what they plan to do, and I found them to be inappropriate, I felt that I needed to delineate very specifically not to do that. Linda does not need to be on a panel. If she is, that's great. There's a gazillion, we probably have 24 women we could invite. But just it's the idea of how to do it versus how not to do it. And if you, Alex, and everybody here, we can get the commitment from staff. We have Allison just saying in our public Zoom meeting next week and that she's not going to go forward with these ideas. That's the reason for the specificity of those things. So if we get a commitment that that's being pulled back, then I'm fine with the approach that Patty recommended. And Matt.
Okay, Sue, you're up.
Yeah, mine goes to kind of follow up on Lauren as well. My concern was a very specific mention about a Quill article, and I won't go into the specifics now except that I discussed that, and I have very grave concerns that if there's been a commitment there, that is very ill-advised.
Okay, I think we all know what you're talking about, and that's as much as we can say in a public meeting. Matt, did you have your hand up? Did anyone have their hand up? Okay. If we are done with this discussion for now, we will obviously continue with a lively discussion on this next week, however we vote. We do have a motion on the table from Lauren and Sue, and this is to the very specific, obviously Matt has suggested a different course. This is to the very specific motion that she made, which mentioned, for example, someone specific we could honor. I don't know if we need to read that again since we just read it. And it's in, is it in the chat? I don't actually see it in the chat.
No, I had trouble putting it in the chat, so I emailed it to Matt, but I can try, I'll give it another shot.
And you can, because that way you don't have to read it aloud.
Would be on the panel. It didn't specify that she had to. Right. It was the concept of the panel of those kinds of women.
Okay.
Specifically to keep out what Sue was referencing.
Okay. Well, if everyone feels comfortable voting, if they remember the motion well enough, because it does take time to recite. Do we feel comfortable voting? We remember what the specifics enough. Okay. So we have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. All those against say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Okay. So the motion does not pass. We have a simple majority there. So I think it is, though, for all the reasons we discussed. Lauren and Matt, I saw you in that order. Lauren, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah. So if I gave you guys a more general motion to what we discussed for us to endorse the concept for at the next meeting, would there likely be support?
That was Matt suggested, and Matt had his hand up. Matt, were you raising your hand to make an alternative motion?
Yeah, I defer to Lauren, but what I would support is on Saturday asking the board to designate a few board members to work with staff, and just to keep it that broad, and then those staff members will know from the discussion we'll have on Saturday that we do not want to celebrate 50 years of women. We want to celebrate women.
Okay.
So let me give this a shot.
Can we make that the motion?
2 sentences. I move that the executive committee endorse for a motion to be brought before the full board that the Society of Professional Journalists doesn't officially recognize its 50th anniversary of admitting women.
Okay, that's more specific than what Matt said.
Well, just let me finish. And that in 2019, that SPJ recognizes accomplished women journalists.
Okay, my objection is cutting off any debate before we have the staff retreat and the, so I'm just letting you know, I would vote yes to what Matt said, but I would still vote no to what Lauren said, because that would still cut off discussion at the staff retreat on Thursday and at the board meeting on Saturday. My goal is to get to a motion that will allow discussion on Thursday and Saturday. So I'm just letting you know, because it's a close vote, I would vote for Matt's motion, but not for Lauren's. Matt, did you intend to make that a motion, though? That's what I didn't get before Lauren spoke.
Well, it sounds like Lauren made her motion. She wants to withdraw it. I would, again, just suggest that we that we designate some staff, some board members to work with staff to celebrate women this year.
Okay. I do think we have two competing motions, and I'm willing to entertain. I did hear Matt's first, but if you want to defer to Lauren, we can entertain Lauren's motion, and then if that does not pass, we can entertain Matt's motion. Matt, you spoke first, so it's up to you. Do you want to defer, or do you want to make that a motion?
I'll defer to Lauren, but
okay.
I just to be clear, I don't want to support, and I would vote no on Lauren's motion.
Okay. I mean, I think that I just don't want to cut off debate. But Lauren, if you want to make that motion, there's a motion on the table from Lauren. Do we have a second?
Oh, okay. So at this point, I think I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I don't see the need for Matt's motion because we can have that discussion without a motion. It's so broad.
No,
my goal is to make sure that this organization does not officially recognize the 50th anniversary for admitting women for all the reasons we've discussed.
I understand that's your goal, but my goal is to open up discussion to the staff and the broader board so that everyone can debate that and decide. I saw Matt and then Patty, Patty, and then Sue. But Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I would even name Sue and Lauren to this group. They're the ones who are passionate. If you guys, I would be happy to have you advocating for this in a conversation. I just think that philosophically, diplomatically, rather than say no now, go to the table, hear them out, and then say, you know what, here's what we think.
And I actually don't think that Matt's motion was too general because it called specifically for a working group. That's pretty specific. All it doesn't say is, it doesn't say yes or no that we're going to have an anniversary. But Matt, do you want to make that motion? I'm just trying to be clear on if you're making a motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take it from the recording, what you said earlier, or do you want to rephrase your motion?
I'll make it again. I move that we appoint, call it a working group, board members to work with staff on a way to celebrate women this year.
Second.
Okay. Second from Patty.
Yes.
Do we have any further discussion, or are we ready to vote? Okay. We have a motion on the table from Matt Hall, second from Patty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. All those opposed say, oh, Lauren, was that an aye?
I was trying to hit my unmute button.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So Lauren is an aye as well. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Oh my gosh, Michael's just joining in. Michael! Michael, we are glad to have you. We are actually, though, in the middle of a motion, which you missed the discussion for. So I guess we just have to proceed. We're in the middle of voting. Sorry. Any nays, any abstentions? Sue, what are you voting?
It's just a request.
We need to finish voting on the motion, though. I asked aye. We had Patty, Matt, Lauren, and I, and then I asked for nays and abstention. Are you voting? Are you nay or abstention?
I voted yes.
Oh, okay, you're voting yes. I didn't see you raise your hand. Okay, so that's unanimous among those people on the call. For the minutes, we should note, because Michael wasn't able to vote, that he joined late, so he's in the meeting, but that's why it was unanimous among the five of us. You'll handle that, Matt. Okay, Sue, you're up next.
Yeah, I would very much encourage you, when you meet with staff next week or are there as a fly on the wall at their staff meeting, to please convey to them our concerns and tell them, frankly, you can share with them the information I got in testing the waters at this meeting yesterday with the DC SPJ chapter. And these are people who normally support all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Have the means, the desire, and the dedication to SPJ to support these things. But when I got zero response to, frankly, the 110th, and the idea of commemorating or honoring, they much prefer that whatever 50 years we have spent not be done in a manner that would recognize SPJ's history in getting there, but in celebration of all that women have done for this organization. That is a critical point.
That's very well put. I'd like to add one thing, and this is not officially for Matt's motion, but maybe the follow-on is, not only do I want to involve the staff and the full board, I would actually like to involve the members as much as possible. There may be ways to do focus groups or polls of members to get their feedback on how they would like to see. I mean, the anniversaries exist, the 110th and the 50th. The question is how we want to mark them. If we want to mark them, how so? I would actually like to see us reach out to members, maybe chapter leaders, poll chapter boards, reach out to members board. That's something we could do in February because it's still early in the year. And maybe even use these tools we're exploring on Zoom to do a Zoom focus group and allow people to take polls that way. So that might be something this working group that Matt recommended can also look at. Okay, I do think we need to move on. We've passed a motion, and we will be talking about this next week. Matt, yes.
Point of order. We voted on 50 and women, but didn't address 110.
That's a good point. Do we want a similar motion on 110? Because we did specifically address including women in this. The 110 would just be, I mean, we could say what I just said, which is we'd like to involve the board and the membership as much as possible in deciding how to mark the 110th anniversary. Yes, Sue.
On the wording, I would say not like to onboard. We would ask that the board absolutely be included and make it perfectly and ultimately clear.
Yeah, I'm speaking off the top of my head, and to be clear, I'm chairing the meeting, so I can't make the motion. But if someone else would like to make that motion, we could entertain it. Matt, you brought up the 110. Do you want to make that motion, or do you want to defer to like Sue or Lauren to make it?
Sue, why don't you make it?
Okay. You did just raise it. Some good points there. So Sue, would you like to make a motion on the 110?
I'll be happy to make the motion, which says in essence that the matter of a proposed 110th, I hesitate to use celebration, but celebration of SPJ will require the involvement of board representation together with staff.
Yes. And do we want to add anyone else to that? I'm sorry, but let's Sue finish. Is that the motion?
I think that pure and simple. That's the point
okay.
I want to get.
Okay. Now we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I actually saw Michael's hand go up first. Was that to second the motion, or did you have a comment? To second the motion. Oh, you're on mute, Michael. Can you unmute yourself? I can. Actually, you're not on mute. I think it was just very soft because you're not muted. That was a second for the motion. Is that correct? Okay, good. So Michael is the second on that. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion? Michael as the second.
I guess my big question on these celebrations is financial. Does staff have a budget for doing this? And what is it?
And I mentioned this earlier because someone raised actually in the chat the issue of the scarves and the yoga mats. And what staff has said, and I actually did make sure she put this in the memo, was that we would not go ahead with anything that would cost money unless it was sponsored. In other words, if we sell product, the product would be sponsored. A sponsor would pay to make the scarves or pens or whatever, and then we would sell them at 100% profit. So it should not cost anything. The idea is this should be a fundraising effort, and that is in writing in the memo now. Did you have anything else to the question, Michael? Okay. No. Matt had his hand up.
Can I actually suggest a friendly amendment that we say that in the motion? I'm fine with having no cost whatsoever to the organization to celebrate the 110th this year.
Okay. That's a friendly amendment though, right? Okay, so we have Sue's the proposer. You're okay with that amendment? Michael is the second.
Absolutely.
Okay, Michael, do you support that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is amended to say, you know, no cost to the celebration. Any further discussion before we proceed to a vote? Yes, Patty.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
I think my greatest concern about the 110 is what seem to be inflated expectations. Maybe that's not the right word. What's laid out in the memo makes it sound as though people will flock to SPJ and open their wallets for 110. And that strikes me as a bit unrealistic. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. As long as none of these ideas take money to implement, I'm not against them necessarily, but I don't want us to look foolish, like make some big splash, 110, woo-woo, and then have nothing really come of it. It is, you know, I see in the memo that that Allison is citing research and groups that say you mark all of your, you know, you can pick any anniversary to celebrate and it could be a win-win. And, you know, I'm not against any of these ideas, to be clear. I really, you know, thinking of new ways to raise money and to excite members is always a good idea. I just don't know if 110 is an occasion that's going to get people excited and is going to bring in any new real dollars. And the bigger issue really is not so much that we would look foolish, but that staff time would be devoted to something like this for naught, right? That we put a lot of time and energy into implementing something where, you know, Larry, for example, might better use his time to be meeting with high wealth individuals who might, you know, put us in their will, whatever.
I do see Lauren's hand. I just want to point out one thing, which is the fundraising staff, which is predominantly Larry, but some others work on it, is already telling potential funders that this is our 110th anniversary. We were founded in 1909. What we're talking about now is branding it, having a logo on the signatures of the staff and branding it. But we're already telling people, hey, we've been around 110 years. That's part of the pitch that we're the longest journalism organization. So they're already telling people that. They do have some specifics with funders who appear to be interested in that. Just FYI, we're already telling people we've been around 110 years. Lauren, you're up next.
Okay, so I share Patty's concerns, and I'm hoping that when you are with staff the day before the retreat, or if this comes up at the retreat, that you share those concerns. And also related to the motion as amended with no funding, I just want to verify that there is not going to be some sort of big attempt at some big fundraising happy hour cocktail party in Indy, because the people aren't there. I mean, we're there, and I know we talked before about we get the boards together. It used to be for lunch. The timing's different, so we can do it at cocktail hour. We can have a cake. But if there's some sort of effort like that to do it at EIJ where people are already there, not to spend a bunch of money at a place that people would have to travel to. So I just want to make sure that the no cost has been made clear to them, so that a bunch of money is not being spent for that weekend.
Okay.
Alex?
Yes, Sue, you have your hand up. I just need to set this.
For the 100th anniversary, I mean, we did some nice things, as some of you may recall, but, you know, I think we did things in proper proportion to the organization and what we could afford. I would hardly think that marking the 110th anniversary should exceed what we did for the 100th anniversary. Let me just put it out there.
Okay. Michael, did you have your hand raised earlier? I thought I saw your hand up.
I just, again, I agree with Lauren saying, not because I want to get in the way of what staff wants to try to do, but it is about, to me, it's always about the money. And I don't understand, like Lauren said, why we would do something amongst ourselves that would spend a dime if it doesn't help us raise 2 dimes.
I haven't heard about any plans that would involve additional funding. As far as raising concerns with the staff, I am flying in on the morning of the day before the staff retreat for the specific reason of meeting with them. And I do plan to raise several of these concerns to talk about the anniversaries, but also just generally the communication between the staff and the board.
But you're not raising that in the staff retreat, right? That's separate?
No, I'm going to the staff retreat. Both Erwin, by the way, I don't know if y'all know this, both Erwin and I are going to be in the staff retreat on Thursday, all day. And I'm also flying in a little before him on Wednesday. I'm going to be doing some meetings with the staff, some particular meetings. Yes, Patty, you're up next.
So a couple things. Number one, I think we need to try to support our staff to the extent possible, and that we should communicate to our staff that we're happy that they're thinking of new ways to bring in money, but that we have some concerns that the 110 is really the best vehicle, and that the 50th might be problematic. So, you know, we don't want to, again, you know, Allison has been concerned that we are micromanaging, but I think the guidance we're trying to provide here are the ideas that have been put forward so far the best ideas, and are there other ideas, and you know, what's the ratio of staff time versus the potential income producing aspects from these different things. And I think that they're thinking of all those things. You know, we're not geniuses here. I think that they're smart people and they're thinking of all those things. And then Alex, I just have to raise my own concerns about your involvement in the staff retreat, and I remain concerned that that's going to be problematic, that this is Allison's time to work with her staff. You know, I know you've already booked and that you're going, and that, you know, Wednesday, if you're going the day early, I think that's perfectly great. You're going to talk with people, meet with people, you know, develop relationships and so forth. But I do wonder if you and Erwin being there while Allison is trying to conduct a retreat is going to be, I don't know, is going to be problematic.
I can respond to that. First of all, Allison invited Erwin and I. We didn't invite ourselves. She wanted us to be there. We're actually part of the program. We're going to be making presentations, talking about SPJ, the history of SPJ, bearing in mind that a lot of the staff is brand new and doesn't know this yet. We're going to be talking about the board, what the foundation does, what SPJ board does, how we work together. So we're actually part of the program. And part of the reason for the retreat is for them to talk to each other and learn more about each other's jobs. But part of the reason is actually for them to meet the two presidents and hear what it is our boards do. They do have weekly staff meetings when they can talk among themselves. So that is actually part of the reason, and she did invite us for that purpose. So it's not that we're imposing ourselves on her, far from it. And there will be plenty of time when the staff can meet and talk amongst themselves, and there'll also be time when Erwin and I will meet with people. We've got quite a program scheduled. So, and Erwin and I booked, and this is something that the foundation is supporting. And I do actually believe there's a tradition. It's perhaps more necessary now, but I know, for example, that Rebecca flew in for something similar last year. So I don't know if it's, I see Sue shaking her head. It may not be a long-standing tradition, but it is something we've done before, and it's a way for the head of the two boards to interact with the staff.
Perhaps one visit, but I don't recall it being a staff visit. And I will echo Patty's feelings. I think being there perhaps to share with the staff some background on SPJ, and having Erwin there share some background on SDX is fine, but to sit in on the entire meeting. I've been on staff meetings and stuff, and I think the staff, if you're really looking to form cohesion, needs to be there with their superior, not from an outside force. I think what you are trying, let me just complete. I think it's fair to provide some insight into the operations, since most of them are new. There are very few people, sadly, left who have any sense of history and understanding of how we do operate. But I think that at that point, once you lay it out, take your questions, I think it would be wise for you, frankly, and Erwin to exit and leave them to handle the discussion.
We have a whole program planned. Trust me, the staff will have plenty of time to talk amongst themselves. There's no reason for those concerns. We've also been planning this since December. I wanted to go visit the staff in December ahead of their Christmas party. It just didn't seem like the best thing to do, to have sit-down one-on-one meetings with the staff right before they went off to celebrate their holiday party.
Right.
So this is something that we've been planning for a long time, and trust me, it will be productive time.
Our College of Journalism has a retreat every single fall. We don't retreat very far, usually to the third floor of our building. So we focus on our issues. Outsiders generally are not welcome. If visitors come, they come, they leave, and that's what it is. It has to be.
I'm sorry, I do have to take the exception to the idea that Erwin and I are outsiders. As we've been reiterating again and again, the board sets the policy, the staff implements the policy. This is one chance for the president of the SPJ board and the SPJ Foundation to meet with staff one-on-one and in groups and share our perspectives. The staff works together in the office every day and has weekly meetings. There's lots of time for them to interact. This is something Erwin and I are taking a great deal of time to come and be with them. And I think it's going to be immensely productive.
I beg to differ. I think Patty's right on the money. I just want to go on record as saying that.
Okay. Michael and then Lauren. That's the order I saw your hands.
First of all, apologies for being late. I have a family situation. Second, can I ask a question, Alex? I mean,
yes.
Did staff, I mean, it's one thing to be invited. It's another, like, you are the president. So if you say you want to go, you're going to get invited. Did Allison actually just say, hey, I want you there? Or was it, hey,
No, we've been planning this for a long time. We were actually going to do it in December, and we've been doing it in January. It's actually very important. Rebecca went out a couple of times, actually, and met with the staff. It's actually very important. It's an important part of the president's role because I'm not there in the office every day to talk to them. And so many of them are new and don't know the role of the board. And much of our complaints as a board has been, well, the staff doesn't understand the role of the board and vice versa. This is a very, very important thing that Erwin and I are doing this week. Lauren.
So I also want to say that I share Patty's concerns, and it's one thing for you and Erwin to go there, to set out, you know, what your goals are, talk about how you see both yourselves and the boards working with them. But the idea of a staff retreat is really about team building amongst themselves with the leader who is the executive director, and having anybody else there really doesn't, I'm afraid, will impact. It's not personal to you. It's just structurally, it's not going to be the most effective way to go, and it's not going to be the most beneficial thing for them. And especially because of all of the issues and the turnover, and we've got some new people. We've got people just starting right now. Really, an opportunity. For them to bond as a team amongst themselves.
Okay, and obviously I would say that this is about improving the communication between the new staff and the board. Matt, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I don't want this to seem like everyone's piling on here, but I do say, and I will say that this is a staff retreat, that there is a great value in communication, that the communication among the board, among the staff, and between the board and staff is terrible, as terrible as I've seen it in my fairly long history, relatively long history, sorry, Sue, with SPJ. And that needs to be improved, full stop. But this is a staff retreat, and the staff major issues. We've seen 4 people that Allison has hired, that have left. The staff needs to get, I'm lucky I'm not the first person using this term in this meeting, public meeting, but they need to get their shit together. Okay, they need to get their shit together. And this is a chance for them to do it. There is a great value in you and Erwin and saying, here's what we think, but I would humbly suggest that the best use of our time, of your time, of Erwin's time, is you and Erwin getting together and trying to map out a strategy so that this organization...
We built that into the program too. Most of what you're describing is what we've already built into the program. So with all due respect, it is noon. We're an hour into the call, and we really do need to discuss the fellows. So with all due respect, most of what you're describing is actually what we planned for this week. Mike,
can I make a motion?
No, we really need to move into executive session to discuss the fellows.
Motion, please hear him out.
Don't we have the right to
Oh, you support the motion, so you've already made a motion in advance? Is that it?
I'm making a motion to hear more of what Matt said, so you don't interrupt him.
Okay.
I think that's a valid, I think we're allowed to make those kind of motions.
Okay, you weren't here for the beginning. We did have a 2-minute timer rule, which I've been doing, so that was the 2-minute timer. But if no one else wants to speak, I can restart the timer.
Spend 2 more minutes to Matt, because I know.
Okay, I will restart the timer. Matt, you've got 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Michael, and everyone. Look, you're going to do what you're going to do. Alex, Erwin is going to do what Erwin is going to do. You guys are longstanding members of the organization and have every right to do what you think is in its best interests. I would just humbly suggest that, in my opinion, its best interests lie with you going on Wednesday, doing everything you can do to talk to staff, build those networks, build those bridges. They need to be built. But then on Wednesday, the vast majority of that staff retreat is for staff. Allison needs to be seen as a strong leader in a very small organization where people work very closely together, and there's been such chaos that she needs to have to build the trust of those people, many of whom are new, many of whom have been there in Linda Hall's case, for longer than most of our members have been alive. That dichotomy, it's like a game of Survivor. There are tribes that need to come together there. Irwin's presence, it may help. It also may make it difficult because they're going to be seeing this not as a staff, but as an SPJ joint. And in reality, this is designed as a staff retreat. Again, no problems with you being there. I wish that we were all in Indianapolis so we could all get together in a room and just talk out our problems, as I've been saying for months, because this organization has major communication problems that need to be resolved. I know I only have about 10 seconds left. So again, I will just say, please listen to our concerns. Please take them to heart. And if you can keep that in mind as you're there, let the staff do what the staff needs to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, with all due respect, this is exactly what Irwin and I are talking about. I don't think we can spend any more time on this because we have a very full list of fellows
more time on
to
this.
discuss. Okay, we do have a very full list of fellows to, okay. We do have I'm sorry, I have to cancel this. I have to
Alex,
do
it's not
this
gonna
timer.
take us-
We have a very full list of fellows to discuss, and that is the one thing that must be determined this week.
You're not, I make a motion that we discuss this more. Can you ask for a second?
We don't need to make a motion. We can discuss this more if the committee wants to discuss it more. We could discuss it more, and I saw Sue's hands and Lauren's hand, but at some point, we are more than an hour into this meeting. We have a 2-minute timer on comments so we can keep you missed that at the beginning, Michael. So we can keep the conversation going. But at some point, we will absolutely have to move into executive session to discuss the fellows because that's one thing we must do today. Okay, I saw Sue and then Lauren.
First of all, nobody else seems concerned about our time, Alex. I think it's fair that you keep your eyes on it, but I think all of us think this is important enough. So let me just point that out. Secondly, my point is, and again, no aspersions cast on you, but I have to say that in meetings like that, when others are outsiders, non-staff members at a staff meeting, may inhibit a free flow of discussion. I will just lay it out there. There may be things that they want to discuss about Irwin. They may have things they want to discuss about you. I don't know, but I think it's fair that you not be in the room when those things take place.
I couldn't agree more, and there will be time on the program for them to have those discussions. I really do have to insist that you've all made the same point repeatedly. We do need to discuss the fellows of the society. If you have another point to make, other than the fact that there needs to be time in the retreat for the staff to share ideas without Irwin and I being present, which is fine, that will happen. But if you have another point to make, please raise your hand. But we do need to move into executive session because I do have to
leave this discussion. Thank you. I make a
Sorry?
motion to continue.
Is that you should have a minimal amount of time, and the staff with Allison need the absolute.
I believe you've made this point. Does anyone have another point to make?
Oh, because I was previously recognized, I just want to say that I wholeheartedly agree with what Matt and Sue said.
Okay. Michael.
So I have a parliamentary procedure question.
Okay.
Well, I'll preface it with this. And I say this with no insult because it describes me too. Alex, you have a very strong personality. Pot, kettle, the whole thing. And I think the reason that this is such a point of conversation is it's not just about a staff retreat, it's also a strategic conversation about our staff communications and how much we should be there. So I am wondering, I am not confident what's going to happen at the staff retreat. I can tell you this, I was contacted by someone on staff who did not want our presence at that retreat. So I don't know how it went down. I don't know if anyone else has talked to staff or had staff reach out to them, but that's a concern. I wonder if you would agree to speak, to only be there for half an hour of their staff retreat.
Yeah, Allison and I will work on a program, but again, this committee cannot be dictating to staff in that way.
Because I thought I still wasn't done with my 2 minutes, but if I was, then I'm not. So I'm just saying that would you agree to limit your contact during the staff.
Allison and Irwin and I will work on a program.
I guess you could do that. So I guess what I'm asking is, if you don't feel like doing that, my parliamentary procedure question is, can the executive, which sits as a board of directors, pass a motion that says that we will allow our staff a staff retreat and that we will only be there for the first half hour? Those are my questions.
Well, first of all, I did say earlier, I actually don't really approve of executive passing motions that exclude the whole board, because the whole board should be on those. But of course, this is happening before Thursday, so that would be an exception. Does anyone else want to speak to
Well, is
Michael's
it possible
motion?
to pass a motion? I'm not sure on the procedure, and McCloskey's not here.
I don't know. It does look very bad externally if the executive committee is trying to limit the president from speaking with the staff at a time
Half hour?
when we are trying to improve communication between the staff and the board, and to make the point that the board sets policy and the staff implements policy, to then hamstring the president. So I'm flying all the way out there to Indianapolis and I can't speak to the staff on Thursday other than this half an hour. That looks very, very bad externally.
It's a half an hour.
Matt, you had your hand up in the soup.
I guess I would take another tack, but I would first have a point of order before we tackle another motion, that we still have a motion on the floor that we would require board representation together with staff at no cost to SPJ to celebrate our 110th anniversary.
All right.
I would suggest this. Alex has made clear that she's going to go. Alex, you've made clear that hopefully you'll listen to what we're saying, but you'll do what you feel is appropriate. So I would suggest that we recommend that the full board adopt a policy that says staff SPJ do not go to staff retreat.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was actually Michael's timer, not Matt's timer. That was
Point of order there.
I do have a question, Matt, because the timer went off. So you're saying we should make a policy for the future limiting presidents to be unable to attend staff meetings? Is that what you were saying when this?
No, what I said is that board members should not go to staff retreats.
Yeah, I typically have a problem with policies, just personally. Obviously, I'm one person. I have a problem with policies that limit future boards and future presidents from doing things, because we have no idea what's going to come up. But if you want to make that motion, we can then hold discussion. I do have to say that we must discuss the fellows today. And there are two other items in executive session that are very important to discuss. This was not an item on the agenda and probably should have been brought up under other business, because we really must discuss the fellows, and we really must give them their due. We have a lot of important people on the fellows list. But do you want to make a motion now, Matt? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I do. But again, point of order, we have a motion on the floor that we need. Can I call a vote?
Actually, I don't think we had a specific
I'll call
motion.
the question. I call the question.
What is the question? You're calling Matt's question? Which
Well,
question?
there's a motion that, on the 110th that was moved and forwarded. It was debated, but it was never voted on. So I'm calling the question for us to vote on that motion.
Wait, we voted.
No, this was a motion by Sue, seconded by Michael. And again, the motion is. on the
Okay,
110th
so this entire tangent on the staff retreat was before we voted on that. That's what you're saying.
Correct. We haven't voted, so I want to get that vote on the record.
Can we put this aside and deal with the 110th, and then we really must discuss the fellow.
Question's been called. We're
Okay,
gonna vote.
the question's been called, so we have to vote.
Okay, so we are voting on the motion for the 110th anniversary, and I'm sorry, because it has been such a long tangent, can you read out the motion on the 110th anniversary, Matt?
Yeah, for the 110th anniversary, those discussions will require board representation together with staff at no cost to SPJ.
Okay, that's the addendum to the motion.
That's the full motion.
That's
That's the motion with addendum.
Okay, so that's a motion that that's a separate motion from the one we voted on earlier. We need a second. Who's,
And that's the
Are you-
Michael seconded it.
Michael seconded. Okay. And this is, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, I believe that's unanimous, but any nays, any abstentions? Okay, the motion is passed. without further ado, we really do need to move into executive session and discuss the fellows and the other items on the executive agenda.
As a point
I
of
saw
order,
Michael's hand first, and then Lauren.
I was just going to say that I don't think we heard Lauren from before. So.
Okay,
I
Lauren.
was just saying, as a point of order, I believe that Matt tried to make a motion when there was another motion on the floor. So from a process standpoint, he should be able to make that motion now that there's no longer a motion on the floor.
Yeah, my motion is that we recommend on Saturday's meeting, that the board consider a policy where SPJ board members do not attend SPJ staff retreats.
I second it.
Okay, so Lauren is the second. I don't know that we need any further discussion, but does anyone feel need for discussion? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, nay, I will be a nay. Any abstentions? Okay, I do think it's bad precedent to limit future boards. And I also think it's very bad precedent for the executive committee to pass binding resolutions. Michael, you weren't on the phone when I said this earlier. I've always found the executive committee a bit of an elitist tradition, but it's like the Electoral College. It dates back to when everyone had to fly in person. I really don't want this executive committee passing binding resolutions like we just did that will tie the hands of future boards. Of course, future boards can vote to overturn motions. So,
Just as a point of order, Alex.
actually, I saw Matt's hand first and then Lauren. Matt?
We didn't bind anyone. I asked for a recommendation for the full board to vote on Saturday to create a policy. There's nothing binding. This is purely a recommendation.
Okay. Okay, we do need to move into executive session. Michael?
I'll take a stab at this. It may not pass. I think Matt's idea is great, but I don't think it helps for now. I will make a motion, and I know I'm usually one that hates executive committees making decisions, but we have a choice. I'll make a motion that for this upcoming staff retreat, that the board of directors be there for half hour and then let the staff have the retreat. That's my motion. It might fail.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion. Sure, absolutely.
I believe we've actually already had the discussion, but does anyone still want to have a discussion?
I'll defend my motion by saying that it's an extension of what Matt is proposing. A half an hour is, Erwin and Alex will be there anyway. They can talk outside of that, but Alex, frankly, I don't trust you when you say that you will give them plenty of time to talk, just in how you conduct your meetings now. As much as I appreciate your enthusiasm.
But that's not my meeting.
You interrupt a lot. My concern is that during that staff retreat, you have a big personality, and that personality might overwhelm a bunch of staffers who, I think I still got my 2 minutes. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying?
We do actually need to move on. I hear you, and I just want to say that this will largely defeat the purpose of the trip. Because the point was for me to actually hear.
You said I had 2 minutes to talk, Alex. You said I had 2 minutes.
No, I'm giving you a full 2 minutes again, but I'm telling you, I wanted to attend this meeting to hear from you.
Part of my was for, because you keep doing this thing.
No, you have your 2 minutes.
I am not at my 2 minutes yet. You got to be kidding. Okay.
No, I've restarted the clock.
Thank you for proving my point. Sorry. Thank you.
No, but your point is ill-chosen. I'm actually chairing this meeting. So I need to keep the meeting moving along. I need to tell people when it's being repetitive and we have another very important item to discuss. The meeting on Thursday I will not be chairing. I will be attending it as an auditor, and I will be listening to what the staff has to say. So what you're doing now is completely eliminating the purpose of my trip.
Unless the board votes to continue conversation, you aren't the dictator of this group. You are the facilitator of it. So if this group or the board of directors decides to extend conversation on any issue it so chooses, it can call a question and you have to vote on whether to continue the conversation if you don't want to let it happen. But that's how this is supposed to run. And that is essentially my
It is how it's supposed to run, but I have to tell you, we're an hour and 15 minutes into a meeting, and I said we would move into the executive session at about the half-hour mark because it's very important that we discuss the fellows. part of my role as the chair of a meeting is to keep the conversation moving along so we get to all of the salient points we have to discuss the fellows today.
Unless the board votes to continue a conversation, and then you have to let it happen, Alex.
Yes, and I have let that happen, or we would be in executive session by now discussing the
Well, I
fellows.
guess you could do
If I
it.
didn't do that, we wouldn't be having this conversation at almost 12:20.
Okay, well, I have a motion on the floor. It was seconded.
Okay, do we have a second?
I seconded it, Alex.
Okay, Sue's second, I thought so. Okay, any further discussion? Matt?
I'm going to explain on the same philosophy that I took with the last vote where we talked about the 50th celebration and try and stick to a broad issue to facilitate the discussion. I'm going to vote no on this.
Oh,
Not
I'm
because
sorry.
I necessarily disagree with it, Michael, but because I don't think that we should tie someone's hands. And I think our committee's point is clear with my motion, which is why I made it. We don't think it's appropriate that a president go, that Alex has bought a plane ticket, that it's up to Alex and Alex alone to make these comments. So I think that 30 minutes is, A, it's restrictive, and B, there's 3 votes for it, and there's 3 votes for it. And by my last motion, you'll know that generally that's okay for my philosophy. I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here in a very real way, but I'm trying to explain
Yes,
it
you are.
for anyone who listens to this meeting during my 2 minutes, which may be a universe of 0 people. But I'm going to vote no because I think it's overly restrictive. I think the message is clear that we don't think Alex should be there. And we hope that Alex, that you, Alex, I'm not talking about you in the third person, that you take our concerns to heart and stay for a de minimis amount of time and let the staff retreat be a staff retreat. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, no, you're well within your 2 minutes. I saw Patty's hand and then Lauren's hand. Patty had her hand up earlier. I do really hope that you have new points to make because we really, as much as people like to talk, and I allow people to talk.
I think we'll go quicker. Just let them talk.
Alex, I have the floor. I want to say I'm not going to vote for your resolution, Michael, but the sentiment is clear that we have concerns that you're making the trip. I feel like this gets to the heart of our stressed relationship with staff. If truly Allison wants you there and invited you, Godspeed. But I feel as though perhaps you and Erwin imposed yourself into the process. And if, in fact, Allison has planned a day that incorporates both of you in a meaningful way and all are welcome to that, again, Godspeed. But I'm concerned that it's a productive day for all and that we're not doing what we keep getting accused of doing, which is micromanaging their business and not allowing some healing and some progress. I just have concerns about you making the trip, but you know, that's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Okay, Patty, I can answer one question there, which is the first I heard of the staff retreat is when Allison called me to invite me to it. I did not invite myself. I had no idea there was a staff retreat until she called and said, there's a staff retreat, can you come? So I want to be clear, I did not invite myself to it. I mean, I can't speak for Erwin, but my understanding is that she called to invite him. So that's the deal. And Patty, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Patty has also visited the headquarters and met with the staff and done that. And we'd been talking about doing that for a long time. Allison said, do you want to do that at the retreat? And I said, sure. Okay, Lauren.
So I've heard a couple of things here, and Michael, I don't know if you were here for one thing, so I just wanted to make sure you heard it. That Alex is planning to go out early and that you're going to be meeting with staff at HQ on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
Which makes total sense to me. But to Michael's point and the points that we were making earlier about you and Erwin talking up front to share what it is you feel you need to share from the perspectives as the presidents of each of your board. Michael, would you be open to amending your motion, not to necessarily put a 30-minute time limit on it, but just structurally how that's done, and to leave that to the executive director, who was the chair and running that meeting, so that when they're done, they leave, they can, and to the point that was raised earlier, they can go off and plan. So it's not like, oh, it's minute 31, we have to kick you out the door now because there was a vote. It's you and Erwin spend as much time as you, Erwin, and Allison deem is appropriate ahead of time at the beginning, and then you take off to give themselves time to, as several people have said here, get their shit together, which they need to do without any outsiders because of the uniqueness of the situation.
That is not only a friendly amendment, I want to go to bed with it. That is a great addition. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Matt, can you read that back to us before we vote?
My understanding is that the motion is that Alex Irwin, at Alex Irwin and Allison's consensus decision, that the two board members attend the retreat at the beginning and leave when they deem appropriate, and let the staff retreat continue with staff exclusively. I'll tighten that up in the minutes.
How do you mean tighten it up?
The minutes may not reflect that exactly. So here, let me take a second stab at it so I have my pen here. That Alex, Allison, and Irwin will convene the retreat together, and that the board members will leave at a mutually agreed upon time to allow the retreat to continue with just staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, I'll be a nay. Any abstentions? No. Okay. The motion is approved, and I want to go on the record saying I think we're setting a very bad precedent. But we absolutely must move into executive session now to discuss the fellows. Okay, so do we have a motion to move into executive session? Patty?
I move that we move to executive session.
Okay, and I saw Matt raise his hand first as a second. Okay, so, oh, wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I actually did mean to ask for public comments before we moved to executive, but this meeting went far longer. If either there's two people on the phone, can you quickly send something to chat? I don't see anything coming.
It looks like it's just
yeah, Bob and someone who says SPJ. I'm not certain who that is.
Really, from staff.
Oh, that could be the staff. Okay, so what I need to do, we have a motion on the table. I don't see them saying they wanted to comment. So we have a motion on the table to move into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, aye, aye. Did people say aye? Okay.
Aye.
Stepped away. We're moving into the act. Any nays, any abstentions? Okay. At this point, I need to remove the two people on the phone. Thank you for joining us. We're moving into executive.
I'm sorry, Alex, one really quick question for my minutes. The vote that SPJ members should not attend staff, that was my motion. That was seconded by you, Lauren? Yeah?
Shit, I did this wrong.
I think so.
Okay, that's what I have. I'm 99% sure. I just wanted to check.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Sorry. It's snap time.
I'm just trying to make it takes a little while to show that the people have been removed before we start discussing executive session materials. Okay, the two attendees who are left have been removed, so we can now move into executive session. I also need to turn off the recording before we can start discussing, before we can start discussing executive session items. I can pause on. Okay, we are recording again. We've exited executive session. Lauren.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so that was Sue. We have a motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays, any abstentions? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you all.
Okay.